Hello, and welcome to Tabletop Cafe, presented by Tabletop Journeys. I am your host, Michael.
And I'm your other host, Chris.
And we are going to continue our conversation from last time. Sans Leonika, he's busy tonight. Actually, he literally just sent me a message that says he's just got home. So stand by. Well, this is terrible radio.
This gives us a perfect chance to kill a little time.
Yeah.
10 days, we get to board a boat to play D&D on a cruise. I am super excited. If Rich Howard was listening to this right now, Rich, your whole underwater adventure, which is something I would never thought I would be interested in, but all your guides, your manuals, your home rules, you sucked me in, so to speak. I was very much, just give me a pre-gen, I'll figure it out, it's a con game, blah, blah, blah. I have rewritten the character 3 times, I have written backstories, I've coming up with an actual personality, so I'm not just going to show up at the table and look at everybody and go, all right, what role do we really need to fill in? So now I actually already have the idea, and preserving the beauty of underwater and bringing the light back into the depths of the dark. I'm very excited. I'm kind of glad I didn't sign up for like 3 games, because if I had to obsess this much about 3 games, my brain might just explode and be like, nope, we aren't going to think of 3 different characters. Or my brain will go the complete opposite and just say, it's too much to think about. Just give me a character. And then I'd just be rolling dice and not that much into it. But I will say I'm impressed too with Rich saying, hey, guys, go on to Hero Forge, make your character up. He'll print out the mini and bring it with him. I'm not a Hero Forge guy. It didn't, my inexperience with it kind of got me a little frustrated in a few spots, because I'm like, no, I just want to tweak it this way. Can I move the pose like just a little more this way? And I just finally said, this is close enough. But then Rich turns around and says, hey, can I tweak it a little bit to make it look more like you described? I'm like, please do.
Sure, absolutely. If
you know how to do this, I'll just smile and let you do it.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to see how it goes. And just partially, I'm also very excited to go someplace where I will have 0 cell phone coverage. And if anybody from work wants to get a hold of me,
too bad.
You're going to have to wait until the Monday when I finally fly back into town.
Carrier pigeon or nothing.
Yeah.
I've never... Okay, so back in like 3.5 days, I played in a campaign. I've talked about it a lot back on the old RPG Academy feed. My group up in Cleveland, we did a rotating GM thing, and it was wonderful group of players. I still miss them. We have certainly fallen apart or fallen away from each other once I moved away. But in that campaign, we did a jump from 7th level to 12th level. When one GM took over, they did a thing where they took us like 1,000 years in the future. The continent had been like sundered, and our characters from before were now like legendary NPCs. Like it was just like this whole thing. And he wanted to do this thing. So we went from 7th level to 12th level. I don't remember if we ever actually played, but I'm going to say that we played once at 12th level. If so, that is the only time I have ever played higher than 7th level in an actual game. So like it was kind of like a one shot. It was a campaign, but basically it was a one shot. Last night, as I was telling you, we did the class warfare for paladins. I'm playing a paladin on the cruise at 7th level. So I've never played an 11th level character. Maybe back in AD&D like one time when but I don't remember it at all. So I'm a little intimidated about knowing the mechanics, and you're not a gambler, right? You don't go to casinos, or do you?
No, not really.
I don't that much. Like I'm big into poker, was for a long time. If there's a poker tournament on the cruise, I'll see if I can join it, but I don't play a lot, but sometimes I'll play blackjack just for fun. I'm not good at it, but I know the basic strategies, and I'll usually just ask the dealer, like, what should I do here? And the dealer will say, oh, you should split or you should stand. They'll kind of tell you what you should do based on the math. But if you're at like a table of people who actually know blackjack and you mess up, you can screw everybody. Like if you hit when you're not supposed to hit, or you don't hit when you're not supposed to, or when you're supposed to, like it can mess up the math. If you're in your first position, you can have the entire table lose their money because of you. And I don't want that to ever happen, right? So basically I always play like super low stakes, and I try to be either the only person there or the last person on the table.
Yeah.
Same thing. This is like how I'm kind of feeling about, like, if we get into like a combat, I don't know that I'm going to run an 11th level paladin as effectively as I should. And I might be the weak link in our combat. So I'm a little nervous about that, about being the person who like screws it up and causes us to like get a TPK or have to run away because I don't know how to best utilize my abilities. I'm a little intimidated, I'll be honest.
Well, I understand that because I'm playing a cleric of light. I have one healing spell, healing word. That's it. So if the party's like, hey, cleric, come heal us. Healing word.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm poisoned. Well, suck it up, Buttercup. So to counter that, I did take a staff of healing, which does let you do like greater restoration and some other stuff. So I kind of fell back on a magic item to help on that. But a lot of the spells are, I feel like it's a little bit of a cross between a sorcerer and a cleric in some ways, but I understand what you're saying with higher level, because I don't think I've really played one that high of a level either. Not on maybe like you said, a one shot.
Right.
I know years ago we did our AD&D. We're both going to make 20th level characters and see how we can duke it out. And I mean, funny enough, we both made fighter wizards that had like magic missile and stone skin, and just ended up laughing and going, well, we're pretty much whoever wins initiative is going to win this fight. So I don't, again, I GM so much, I don't usually get to play characters, and I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out. Now, we both know Rich, so knowing him, he's going to be able to gear everything towards the whole table's strengths, and he's going to be able to say, hey, Michael, you should do this.
Yeah.
Or, hey, don't forget you have this ability, which is a trick I've used. Hey, Michael, it's your turn. Hey, please don't forget you have lay on hands that can also cure poison.
Right. Yeah.
I think. Don't quote me on that one.
I don't think it can in this because I just played last night at 7th level. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, we are going to do a big debrief after we're done. I don't know if it'll be on this show or maybe on TTJ proper with like Josh or Lee when they get interviewing us, but we're going to debrief the whole thing because we didn't, okay, I don't, like I was saying, we did not get offered like professional GM roles, but we were both encouraged to apply because we know both Rich and Neil, who are professional GMs on the boat. And I was intimidated because I don't really know, like I run games at conventions. I run games in a lot of different places. I feel very comfortable doing that, but this is still kind of a weird, unique, like people are paying a lot of money to go on the boat and then run the game. And I was like, what if I run a bad game? So I'm going to see what it's like. And if I don't think I'll be intimidated, I might sign up to be a GM for the next one. So I'm approaching this both as a player, but also as a potential future GM on what kind of experience people are expecting and can I deliver that for them. So, all right. So it does not look like Lewanika is going to join us, or at least he's not indicated. So we will move on. So the plan tonight is to continue our conversation from last time where we were going to take a look at house rules. And it was just like a springboard for us to talk about various ways and styles that we run games. I thought it was a wonderful conversation. It took way longer than I was expecting, which is why we're having a part 2. So we're just going to jump back into that. So, Chris, you're kind of the arbiter of the rules here. So is there a homebrew rule you want to bring up next?
Well, here's one. And again, this is one I've never heard of, but came up on a few different websites. And that was using your intelligence bonus. When you make characters, that gives you bonus points, so to speak, to spend to either buy extra proficiencies or extra languages. That was one I've never heard of. And I was like,
I feel like that was a rule from maybe 2nd edition advanced or 3.5. I feel like that's a thing maybe it was just a homebrew rule that I used, but I feel like that was a thing in previous editions, if you had a higher intelligence, you got more skills, proficiencies, or languages.
I remember in second edition, your intelligence determined the number of languages you started with. So in a way, it gave you bonus languages, but I don't remember it giving you any extra proficiencies. But I mean, let's be honest, second edition's proficiencies were things like fire building. You can make a fire in a storm. So it wasn't quite the same as now. Um, I'm not a huge fan of this one just because it's really going to encourage the min maxers to make characters that have intelligence versus the freedom to go, I want to play Unk that smashes things and can barely speak one language. I think it kind of dissuades people or discourages people from going that route. I can kind of see why people do it because if you are, in theory, more intelligent, the more languages you could learn. I could also say in real life, I could disprove that with myself
Right.
with my dyslexia. Very
Well,
hard for me to learn new languages.
I
I've
think.
tried.
Sorry, go ahead.
I say I've tried a couple times to learn French or Spanish, and my brain short circuits.
I mean, the reason I'm not an English teacher right now is the fact that I could not pass either Spanish or French. When I went to
Mhm.
college back long, long ago, and I was going to be an English teacher, you could not get a teaching certificate in English unless you also had so many credits of a foreign language. And I tried Spanish and I tried French, could not get into either one. Like 101, I was lost after like 3 weeks. So, yeah, I'm the same way. I consider myself a pretty smart guy, but language is just my brain was like, nope. But I think the theory is that was a way to make intelligence useful beyond just spellcasters as a way to like not make it a dump stat. Like you couldn't, like every fighter wasn't going to dump stat their intelligence because it would allow you to do these other things. Every rogue wouldn't dump stat intelligence so that they could be able to have better skills for their other things. I like that in theory, but I don't know that it does more than just give people who were already going to have a high intelligence, again, like your wizards, just extra stuff. I don't know that it actually would balance things out, but I do. I feel like I understand like what they were trying to go for. So I don't
Yeah.
hate it. I just don't know that it's not something I would use now in like fifth edition.
Yeah, I think that they've done enough in a lot of ways to balance the classes out, and adding something like that I think would change that a little bit. So
Yeah.
let's move on to well, this one's kind of multi-stepped.
Okay.
I found several different ideas for initiative.
Ooh. Okay.
So most people roll initiative at the beginning of combat. That sets your turn in the order. I'm the guy who plays a lot of other game systems, so I've played a lot that have like a popcorn initiative where, all right, who wants to go next? Like I run a lot of Shadow of the Demon Lord. Fast turn, slow turn. If you say you want to do slow turn, you're going to go after the fast turns.
All right.
But
Hold that thought. Lewanika is joining us, which means
I see that.
the whole thing's going to change real fast.
All right, no worries.
Yeah. So you can keep
Oh,
talking,
let's
but
see.
it's going to cause.
It'll just be the video that needs to be
Yeah.
moved around a little bit. So, so popcorn was the first one I found. I found one where it says you roll each round instead of just once, which I'm not opposed to, but I just wonder how much more time that's going to put into running your combat, because now each round you've got to roll and set a new initiative order. I also know that's how it used to be. I know in second edition we used to roll a D10, not a D20 for initiative, and you'd add your weapon speed or your spell speed, and that determined your order. Um, the one I kind of liked was if you roll a natural 20, you get to choose when you go in the initiative order.
Mm.
Because I like that because that makes sense. So if I'm playing the cleric and I'm nervous that Lee Winika's character is about to die, I could say, you know what, I want to go after Lee Winika, who's he's playing Unk that just charges into battle every time, and every combat I'm constantly healing him. I already know that's the plan. Versus, oh, I rolled before him. Uh-oh. There's a chance he might die. or it could change, how you want to go. Um, I personally, when I run D&D, we just roll once. That kind of sets the initiative order. What I've toyed around with is how Fantasy Flight Games does theirs. If you haven't played the Star Wars, which I've played tons of, you roll. Everybody just says your number. That sets the order. So let's say you rolled an 18, Leonika rolled a 4, the bad guy rolled a 12. That would just set PC slot 1, NPC slot, PC slot 2. Each round I would then go, all right, PC slot 1, who wants to go? You guys could then choose who goes at first or second. I kind of like that in a way because it's a little more cinematic. Because then you can be like, all right, I need to go twice in a row because of whatever's going on in the scene. So I like the different ideas. Now when I run it, I still stick with just roll once.
All right. I think Leonika's here now. I also think for about 30 seconds there was an echo because when I jumped him in, it doubled the audio again. I think I fixed it, but if anyone is out there listening or if either of you are monitoring, I do think it was echoing just a little bit for a few seconds, but I think it's good now.
Everbetter's on here, so he can tell us.
Leonika, you are muted.
So somehow you're muted. Still muted. Nope, don't give me the finger.
Now?
Oh, there we are.
Oh, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think that echo was me because I actually had the YouTube playing. So that echo you were hearing was definitively an echo, but it was because of me. So not any tech that you guys were doing.
I will also say, I don't know if it's because we're using OBS and not Zencastr, but you sound so much better right now than you did last night on the.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like this is what I want you to sound like when we do those. So I mean, maybe the software, but we don't have time to get into that tonight. Welcome to the show, Leonika.
Hey, thank you for having me once again, and my apologies to the audience. I kind of forgot it was Wednesday, but I kind of did a little date night dinner with my wife, and
nice.
Went to a nice local restaurant. Kind of friend of the family runs, and had a good time. And they were doing a trivia night, and I got to go back in like 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Like I will kill on that trivia. Like I think I got like 2 questions wrong, and I wasn't even playing. I mean, I was all frustrated because they had no clue. But what are you gonna do?
Exactly. So you jumped in. We were talking about initiative, and essentially, Chris brought up some of the various ways that people can use initiative. Different game systems like Shadow the Demon Lord does. I think it's a version of Popcorn, but it's also fast, slow. So you can either choose to go fast, which means you go before the bad guys, but you can only do like half a thing, or you can go slow, which means you go after them, but you can do the full action or the 2 actions. Again, Popcorn is basically I go and then I pick who goes. But if all the good guys go before all the bad guys get to go, and then they can pick themselves again. So you could actually end up where it's like us, them, us, kind of like a snake draft. And you could easily get overwhelmed by that. I will say I'm the person that you roll for the combat. I don't like to pre-roll, even though I don't know that would really hurt anything. There's just something about the energy of the room when it's like, okay, roll initiative, and everybody kind of stops, and like the energy changes a little bit as we're getting ready to move into combat. I know that there are certain powers and abilities and class features that assist with initiative, and if you do it different ways, like when you're playing D&D specifically, you could inadvertently nerf or overpower ability that can affect initiative. Probably the only time I would not do it just roll would be if I have a group of new people, because I have done this when I'm like teaching the game. I'll just say we're going to go around the table, so we'll just go left to right. Or if I have a really big group, which I just don't do that anymore. Like I just won't play in groups that have more than like 5-6 players max. But in my youth, when sometimes we would have 8 or 9 players at a table, I would say we're just going around the table. And then I would let people knew that. So if someone's like, well, I go really high in initiative, well, then you need to sit on my left, because that's the only way you're going to get to go first. But beyond that, I'm just a strictly roll when you get to it. Leonika.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts about initiative and homebrew rules that go along with it. Largely when I'm playing D&D, it's pretty much straightforward. You roll because so many abilities are tied to initiative order that it is very easy to inadvertently nerf player characters, or using the Jeremy Crawford term, eat someone's lunch, uh, simply by making a weird tweak that there's just some odd interactions. And even if it's not directly tied to initiative, just the way certain powers work are impacted by initiative. So, for example, you do a power that puts on an effect until the end of your turn. If you come up with some new interesting way to do initiative rather than that random order, now all of a sudden that power doesn't last on the bad guy as long, or doesn't positively impact the good guy as long. Or maybe someone's making a death save later on in combat at an off time where they wouldn't normally be able to. So I tend with D&D to not mess with ways to do initiative order. Though on occasion, after the first roll is made, if it looks like the player characters are somewhere standardized, like between 20 and say 9, nobody's less than that, I may, especially in a convention scenario, in the latter parts, I may just go with the previous initiative, because I always write. I have like a little whiteboard that I use for initiative, and I'll have it down there. So I will save that to the next one. And if everybody kind of lined up in a good spot, I may just roll for the bad guys because they're in decent spaces. As long as one of them gets something high, one of them is somewhere kind of on the lower end of the teams, then I'm usually pretty happy with that. I feel that's fair to the players, and then we can go on without having to take that time to do it. And especially the last two combats of a convention game, you're normally pressed, at least I am pressed for time.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to truncate that. So that is something that I do on the homebrew side. But similarly, I tend to use initiative order in exploration, and in some cases even the social aspects of the game, because especially if you have very verbose players and very quiet players, using initiative in those situations works really, really well, because you'll say, hey, we are not in combat, but I'd like us to roll initiative so that we, just a straight roll, just so we have make sure everybody gets their chance to be a part of this. Again, an excellent convention technique, because you're dealing with people who may be nervous around new people. You may be dealing with very new players, and sometimes that's a great way for them to see what can be done in a scenario. Right, you want them to know that they have input in each of these aspects of the game. So, initiative is a great way to make sure that happens, and kind of tricks you as a as a storyteller into making sure you ask. Because if you have to say, okay, who's next in initiative, and you look at that whiteboard and say, okay, Johnny, you're up, guess what? You're doing the thing. You're literally making it better. So for your players, and I think that's a great way to do it.
I will also mention I've been running the new Marvel 616 multiverse RPG recently, and I'm not an expert of those rules, although they're pretty simple. But I believe, so if I'm wrong, just take that with a grain of salt, that if you rolled a critical success on your initiative roll, which there you're rolling 3d6, one of them is special. It's your middle die. So if you roll a 6, a 1 on the middle die, and then a 6, so you have 616 is like the super critical result on an initiative. You get to go before initiative, and then you still take your place. So you're probably going to be the top of the initiative anyways, because you've rolled so well. That would count as an 18 plus any modifier. So there's a good chance you're going to be first off anyways, but you may not be, depending on the different characters and everything. But if you roll a critical on initiative, then you go before everybody, like outside of initiative. And then we start initiative. So you may get to go twice in that case. And that seems like, especially comic booky, that does feel kind of like, it's almost like, because it is like a superpower sort of thing. Like, Spider-Man is so ready that he, thwips, and there's two guys that are already, webbed to the sidewalk before he even turns to face Doc Ock, type of a thing. So I like that as an option.
Nice.
Some of the other ones I found are interesting. One that I found that I was using that I actually stopped using was the old critical fumble tables. Those used to be so much fun. The problem I run into with 5th edition is it just doesn't flow with the system very well. It actually, what I found, just bogged it down too much and didn't add any of the tension. Like I loved him in second edition because, all right, Michael, you rolled that one. Time to roll the percentile dice and let me see what happens on the chart. And I mean, some of them were brutal. You cut off your own foot.
Yeah.
Good luck. Well, all the ones I could find now just did not really fit. And I don't know if maybe people were just being nicer with them. I mean, the old ones I had don't work for 5th edition either because it just doesn't quite fit. And I couldn't find it to work the way I wanted it to. So I actually gave up on them.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know if anybody
hate
else still uses them.
fumble tables. I absolutely loathe them. I would never run a game with them, and it would be a red flag for me to play in a game with them. Generally, what I see now, most people try to make them funny, like something funny happens more than anything else, which I would lean towards that. But those brutal, you cut your own foot off fumble tables, that is just not the way I enjoy the game. And again, if you're a fighter, you're going to be rolling more attacks than the wizard. And by the nature of the D20, I'm going to roll more ones. So the person who's the most trained to be a fighter actually has the greatest chance to cut off their own leg. Again, I run very silly, heightened games, but that's a flavor of silliness and absurdity that I don't like. So I'm just absolutely not a fan of those. Leonika?
I lean kind of Chris's way. Like I used to live, die, breathe, and thrive on the power of the fumble table. I'm talking going back to like MERPS days, Middle Earth role playing days. Like everything had this ridiculous chart. I mean, D100, and you were impacting with God knows what. And you could take some crazy ability or have some thing that manipulated your role. Like we did all kinds of foolishness with that. And I think, and this is the grognard in me coming out, that works if you're gaming 3 and 4 times a week in one campaign with the same folks, and you get at least one weekend where you're putting 8 hours in. Because if you're grinding that kind of campaign and you're playing in a game that basically says, yeah, a good half of your characters are dying anyway, like Shadow Dart kind of thing, or what do they call the grinder there when you're playing DCC?
Funnel.
I can't think, the funnel or whatever. If you're playing that kind of game, then fumble tables are actually pretty fun and cool. Like I can see a fumble table in DCC in the funnel stage. After the funnel stage, I don't think it plays as well because once this is your character and you're moving forward with this and you get together once a month, maybe if you're really lucky, got a good game group, and God knows how you scored a cool schedule to do this a given campaign twice a month. That's a big time investment for a grown ass adult, pardon my language, to then have it lose to a D1 and then a 13 on the die. Like, I don't like that. I don't think that's fun for anybody. I think that risk goes beyond tension and goes to stress and anxiety for me, and I wouldn't put that on anybody. That said, if you felt you needed to have some kind of impact for that, the key is make your own rolls and don't make it extensive and large. Make it fairly small and make it loose enough where it is narrative. So it can be, yes, you rolled the one. You may have affect X, but it's only for a short period of time. So maybe it's for the next 3 days, you have a limp, which means you have disadvantage on your dexterity. I'm throwing that out there. That doesn't have to be the one. For some tables, that may be too strong. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's for the next 8 hours, right? Or until the next long rest.
Yeah.
Right. So there are ways to manipulate that, and you have to really, that's your session zero. Everybody grab their beverage. You know, but with that, I think you can make it so it's not excruciating, anxiety causing. But there's a lot of pre-conversation. There's a lot of check-ins that have to go in. And for me, I am blessed to be able to play as often or run as often as I do for as many campaigns and games that I do. I don't want to take the time to, one, put that together, or two, manage that extra thing within my games. I don't think that's the best use of my time with grown adults once or twice a month.
So we got a little bit of weather situation happening where I am. Again, the storms that are starting to blow in, and I'm seeing my internet's starting to get a little in and out. So just in case, Chris is hosting the Zoom, so if I lag, it shouldn't affect that. But I'm hosting the stream, so it's possible that we might start getting some stuttering on the stream. So my apologies if that happens as well. So just it's one I wanted to bring up anyway. So let's just go to and Chris, if you want to continue, but I wanted to bring up the critical hit side of that. But if you have anything else on fumbles before we move on.
The only other thing I found with critical fumbles, there was kind of I'll say an alternate rule where it wasn't a chart, but it would be a saving throw. So if you ran up to swing with a melee weapon, it might be a dexterity saving throw or a strength, depending upon how you kind of described it. Or if you were casting a spell, it might be a intelligence or wisdom check if you rolled a 1, just to see if you were able to continue with the magic, and then if there was feedback or different ideas like that. I thought that was okay, but again, how much do you want to bog your combat down with? Okay, hey, Leonika, you run up with the big battle axe and you swing and miss. All right, roll a dex save. Oh, you failed. Okay, you slip and fell. Now you're prone. Or do you want to just, all right, you rolled a 1, you missed.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's something that, sit down and talk, like you said, Leonika, make it your own. I just like to just kind of go, ha, you missed. Next.
Right. Well, to me, part of it goes along the same lines of, like, I want to run the game where you do jump off the balcony, swing across the chandelier, and then try to kick the ogre into the fire. So I'm going to make that easy to do and do more damage than if you just walked up and hit it with a stick. And I think fumble tables disincentivize that type of heroic action, because if I run up and put myself face to face with the big bad guy, and not only am I now going to be taking the hits, but I might drop my sword on a random roll, and then I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take that risk. I'm not saying I have to succeed. Last night we played a game. I jumped head first into the battle. It was super cool. Almost died. I was willing to take that, that punishment, but I probably wouldn't have done what I did if the chances of me not only just failing were higher, but substantially higher if I just happened to roll a 1. Again, I think it disincentivizes the type of game I want to run. So I'm not saying you shouldn't use them, dear listener, but I'm not going to use them. So, yeah.
So you brought up critical hit charts. I don't use them, but what's your thoughts on it?
So for me, for critical hits, what I've done basically since D&D Next is it's max damage and then you roll again. So you are going to get, at minimum, a critical hit is normal max plus 1 up to a true doubling. So if you get max and then you roll max, so they are very powerful, but I do use them for bad guys too. So if I hit you with a crit, normal max, and then I'm going to roll again. I have on occasion toyed with, and this is generally again for newer folks, where I will say, okay, you get just max damage and you can create a story effect or a narrative effect. Like, oh, you want to disarm the person. Okay, you do max damage and they've dropped their weapon, or they are now on one knee so they're prone, or like it's sort of like you still get the max damage, which is cool, and you get to add in a story effect if you would like, or you can take the max plus roll again. Because it happened to me recently in a game I was playing. I rolled a 20, and then I rolled like double 1s on the combat, and it wasn't fun. It was like, oh, I excited, I got that 20. And then it was like worse than like a normal hit should have been. And I don't like that. I like the danger of getting the crit on me, but when I crit, I want it to mean something. Now the crit tables is different. That is again where you have some other, like you're rolling a chart and you do double damage. You disarm them. You literally like disarm them by taking their arm off. You break something they're holding. So if you're fighting a wizard, you might be able to break their staff or their focus. Or I think there's some that like literally you can like decapitate someone on a critical hit. That to me is better than the fumble charts. even though it could be used against me, that is more of incentivizing the type of game I run. But I'm pretty much a strictly max damage plus roll. I just think that powerhouse damage is cool and fun, and it's fast. It doesn't take a lot of time to do at the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you do backstabbing? Is it max damage and you roll the backstabbing dice, or is it just the weapon damage?
So it's everything max, everything roll. So if you're backstabbing, you get 3d6. You've already got 18 on the backstab, and then you roll again. So yeah, it is stupid powerful. But again, natural 20 for me, they should be. You get that natural 20, something freaking cool should happen, up including doing like 70 points of damage on a backstab. But I'm also going to do that to you. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. But do you think that throws off some of the class balance? Because now, isn't everybody going to want to take some backstabbing? Because, well, I've got the chance to really crit and do a ton versus the third level fighter next to me that, he's supposed to hit hard, but now if I crit, I'm doing double the damage he could potentially do.
For me, it hasn't really come up just because it's you have to roll the 20. It has to be in the situation. Mm-hmm. And it's my memory is that when that happens, people are like super excited that the rogue might be able to take out the bad guy here rather than I didn't take out the bad guy, but that may be anecdotal. Anyone, Nika?
Yeah. So I think that that's less of an issue, but you do have to expand how that works just a shade. So for example, a spellcaster casts a spell, bad guy rolls a save. Bad guy rolls a 1 on that save.
That's a critical hit, double damage.
That's a critical hit. The spellcaster does that double damage. Yep. I think that takes care of your question, Chris. As long as everybody has an avenue to that same effect, it's all about whether you rolled the nat 20, bad guy rolls the nat 1 in the given situation. And my experience thus far, at least with 2024, has been there's enough spells where their spell attacks that even most of the spellcasters, many of them at least, get to roll an actual attack to include that. So, for example, a paladin, they're rolling a physical attack before they can engage their auto hit smite, because it's not really an auto hit. The physical attack has to hit. So even in that example, just like the sneak attack from the rogue, they engage that smite, max on the die, plus all the rolls, then whatever bonuses. So I just make sure that however that's done, that applies evenly. I too have been doing that for years. As far as critical hit tables, I used to do them a lot, pretty much at the same time I was doing fumble tables. I just don't think they work well with 5e because the need to speed up the game. If most combat should be between 3 and 5 rounds, maybe 6, or a boss battle might go 7 or 8, I don't think that helps that timing much. And so I stay away from things that really negatively impact the timing. I pick and choose things. Like, it's rare I'll use a bad guy that does hold person unless it's very and extremely thematic, because all that does is slow down the combat. If I'm holding a person, or I've got bad guys that are holding a person, unless I'm doing that so my bad guys can make their escape, all I'm doing is making what could have been a 3-round fight an 8-round fight, or a 5-round fight a 10-round fight. I'm not in for that as a GM. I don't think that helps anybody have a great deal of fun. Yeah, we throw some more dice, and that is fun in and of itself, but not enough people are rolling D12s for damage anyway, so it can't be that much more fun.
Yeah. Well, the reason I
choose characters so I do get to roll D12s for damage, though, specifically. Sorry.
I noticed that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Anyway.
The reason I asked that question is that's the debate I have. I've been doing, just like you said, max damage plus roll the weapon damage again. And I was always just nervous that the thief would just outshine the rest of the party. And then people would be like, well, I might as well just let Michael go. He's going to kill him in one shot. Where the rest of us are just here to tink away and take damage. So maybe I'll play around with that in the Ravenloft game, and we'll kind of see how that actually goes. So it was just something that I really try to think about, because I'm big on trying to make sure everybody has close to the same amount of damage if that's how they're built. Now, I understand I play a lot of social characters and a lot of support characters, So if I'm playing the bard that's running around, all right, you get inspiration and you get this bonus. I don't expect to do much damage. Like I know I've set myself up to just either be the comic relief or just keep supporting you guys. So it's just something that I probably should just kind of pay attention to better. But
I would say in Ravenloft, be very aware of a couple factors.
mhm,
A lot of a lot of monsters are negatively impacted, i.e., double the
mhm,
end result damage whenever radiant is dealt. So a paladin under that rule system who is then smiting with radiant damage, possibly using a radiant damage weapon, um, what I think is normally not terribly outsized, especially at latter levels where they get two attacks, or if they happen to min max and throw in enough fighter levels to be like, or what have you, to get some of those extra ones or find some other way to get an extra attack or whatever, that could be a whole second set of danger beyond or power
yeah.
beyond what we are talking about here. So again, depending on what kind of campaign you're running, um, you want to be careful with that particular ruling because and maybe it only happens once or twice. At which point it's super cool and memorable.
Right.
Everybody loves it. But if you start to notice it's happening a lot, that has the potential for problems.
Yeah, I think if anything, the paladin is the one that would be the concern for me more than the rogue, because the way the smite works is you hit and then you get to decide to use smite. So if you're like, oh, I rolled a 20, yes, I want to use my smite because now it's 24 plus 3d8 on top, versus the backstab, which you kind of have to declare you're doing that. It only works if you hit. So I feel like the smite is kind of the cheat for that rule set. But again, I like in Ravenloft, yeah, you just let off a radiant bomb. Awesome job. You killed the thing. And now everything within 20 square miles knows where you are.
Yeah.
Yep. That becomes a great job winning the battle. The war, however,
The war
is
is
at your doorstep.
exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's something that I've really thought about, and honestly, the players in that game are very conscious of. They're not throwing fireballs. They're not throwing. Well, they're not high enough level, but if they could, they've already said we shouldn't throw fireballs. We don't want to draw too much attention. Like I did a very good job of. Strahd has eyes everywhere,
mhm.
so pretty much everywhere they go, they go. That guy's a spy for Strahd. That guy's a spy for Strahd. Like they assume
Nice.
everybody is out to get them, so it works well. But that's just me and my knowledge of Ravenloft. So I know, Lewinica, you said you had a couple. Did you want to throw a couple out? I mean, I still have more, but I know
Oh
you
yeah.
had some home rules.
Yeah, so one of the home rules that I have been toying around with and I will be using uh later this month at an upcoming convention event specifically for Eberron, deals with long rest. I'm a big fan of the Ghostfire Games YouTube channel podcast and Sean Merwin and Teo Sabadia's Mastering Dungeons. Great conversations there, but because they do tend to play grittier games at Ghostfire, and I backed their most recent Kickstarter, which is in pre-order. Um, the long rest doesn't help a more dangerous, grittier game or a dangerous environment. I think for settings such as Ravenloft, I think grimdark settings in general, and specifically for the Eberron game that I'm going to be running, which is a journey through the Mournlands, um, areas where it's supposed to be more dangerous. The I take a long rest, I get almost all my hit points back, everything's all better, becomes much, much more challenging and difficult. So
Hmm.
with the grittier rest kind of mechanics, it's actually the same base mechanics in the game. It just extends that time frame a little bit. 8 hours is a short rest. A long rest is 72 hours, but it only counts in a very safe place. And therefore you don't have to change anybody's knowledge of the game and what they get, what they gain. You're simply changing how often they get those things. Now, There's a lot to consider with that, and I'm sure anybody listening will immediately say, "But what about my wizard who only gets spells on a long rest?" Yep, that's a devastating effect. So, as a GM, you need to be aware of that. In a convention game, I would probably, or I have made sure that there are some additional spell availability things within the magic items for the pre-gens. If I was playing a game on a home game version, again, I would do something similar. That maybe the magic item Pearls of Power or something to that effect. Little things like that to make sure an extra spell scroll here or there. Perhaps a minor magic item that does a couple of the magic users more favored spells, that type of thing, and spelled armor, weapon, whatever the case may be. There's a number of ways to do that. So you just want to make sure that you are, again, not eating a given character class's lunch. You want to make sure you build for that, but you also don't want to negate that difficulty. So there is a balancing act there. But the idea is make travel an issue. Make the fact that in order to count for a safe place, somebody has to build a safe enough camp. You have to spend X amount of time per, you know, reconnoitering or, patrolling the area to make sure that camp is safe to count. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that safe area has to be a big town and a nice, warm, soft bed. But this is where you make rangers actually count. What a ranger can do as a character count, because now they can be the one with the survival skills to build a safe camp. They can manage. You can build an encounter, a skill challenge, which is patrolling the area to make it safe, right? And now they spend 2 days in that camp. Now that's a long rest. You know, 2 or 3 days walking, 2 or 3 days to get a long rest. I think that could be a really cool mechanic
Mhm.
for certain kinds of games. And I think it would be a great mechanic for certain kinds of campaigns, especially in that lower level. But as a GM, I also think some of these things don't matter once you get to high enough levels. So maybe you only do it tier one, or tier one and tier two. And after that, it's like, hey, we don't need to do that anymore. We got the theme of the world. We did that when we had to. At this point, it's mechanics. We don't need to worry about it. We're going to hand wave that and just go by the regular rules so we can get on with the game. I think you need to be able to manage that and measure that. In addition to, as always, talk with your players. Make sure the people that are at your table are here for that type of game. I
Right.
love that type of game. I always want to be in that type of game, but not everybody does, and I do recognize that.
So I have gone on record as saying I hate random encounters, except in my Ravenloft game, because I've told them it's a much grittier campaign. So what I do is, let's say you two are in Ravenloft and you guys decide to rest. We just had to rest on top of a mountain. Roll a d20. A 15 or higher, something's coming in. If you're like, oh, we're going to hide in this cave. Okay. A 19 or higher, something's going to come in. I like that because I mean, in Ravenloft, things are always hunting. Let's be honest, at night, something's hunting. So do you draw their attention or don't you? And it's based on how well you build your camp. I don't extend the time. I just add in that could be a random encounter, which now interrupts your sleep and you got to start all over
Right.
again. So
Yeah,
it's similar.
2024. Yeah, 2024 has addressed that to some extent. If you are interrupted during your long rest, 2024 simply says you can start back your rest. All you have to do is make up whatever time you were interrupted for. So if you are in a battle that takes you about 20 minutes and you're back to bed in about an hour, you just got to add another hour on the end. So you're good to go. Even in the gritty rules that I'm talking about, because you got 48 hours. Under that rule system, you don't have to sleep the whole time either. It requires, 6 hours of sleep each night, and then effectively downtime activities
Yeah.
of no specific merit or difficulty. So again, if you are interrupted in that scenario, as long as you throw in an extra hour there or whatever, I wouldn't even worry about doing that math. It would be a non-issue. If the camp was good and there was a narrative reason for there to have been an interruption, I'm not going to kill everybody's ability to get their stuff back. I would simply say, you guys, on that third day, everybody was slow breaking camp, didn't quite go as fast, but you finally get going and everybody's good to go, long rest complete.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on those. I think to Leonik was kind of point, well, actually, maybe more even Chris, like in a certain world where you're trying to establish the fiction that you are always in danger, and the way that you camp, when you camp, absolutely can determine success, failure, life or death. That can be fun. But I think in general, 5th edition, the generic flavor of 5th edition, you're heroes. And I almost like a version of that where, like, if you're a farmer and you get like a point of damage because, a goblin tries to attack you, you might need a week to recover. But even a first level character in D&D is such above the normal people. I kind of feel like that could be like, you're in a world where normally you would, but you don't have to because you're first level, or maybe only first level you would do that. The thing I'm running into is I love to put time constraints on my characters and say, like, you've only got 2 hours before the bad thing happens. So you don't have time to take a long rest. So then it's really not going to affect the adventure, but it's going to affect the downtime, because downtime is, you're going to, like, all the wounds that you took, you're going to take a week to recover. But then that's just narrative fluff. And we could do that anyways. You could do that. So I don't know that I would run it, but I would be interested to play in the game with it to see how I like it. So I'm conflicted, but I would say as a GM, I probably wouldn't do that. That's the, maybe you should play a different game argument for me, because I just don't think D&D 5th edition is designed to be gritty. So if I want to play a gritty system or game, I probably would look at a different system.
Yeah, I do see that thought, and that's why I'm pretty careful about when I use it. I like using it in Eberron, but only in the Mournlands, because the Mournlands is this cursed area that has these things. So while I am doing a one shot at the convention, the idea is this 3 adventure arc that I'm working on fits into any Eberron campaign. Like, you guys are on a train that ends up in the Mournlands, and then you have these 3 arcs. So you have been playing under the normal rules until you entered the Mournlands. Dorothy went into Technicolor and then came back to black and white.
Right.
This is kind of that kind of thing. So it is specifically and unique to this cursed environment.
100%. I love that.
Yeah. And so I think that works very well within the D&D system. If I'm doing the Ghostfire Games game setup in Etheris, or a world that uses the Etheris type world, it is not Faerun. It is not Greyhawk. It is not Dragonlance. It is not any of these other things. It might be Barovia, or it might be Ravenloft in some fashion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It might be the Shadowfell in general, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But if I am doing a game where I want to play that Witcher style vibe, or that Hansel and Gretel style vibe, thinking of Hugh Jackman, the Hugh Jackman film or whatever. I think it could be fine for that, but it would be for that. I don't think it fits for all these other things. And there are even some other neat little homebrew rules that I would consider for those as well. Or I might actually, I do have another kind of healing health kind of homebrew rule that I'm interested in trying to see how that works. I haven't found the right venue to try it in yet, but I'm thinking of trying to come up with a good one shot where I could test it.
If only you had an avenue where players could come on and you could try it, and then the general public could somehow witness that and give you feedback.
I know.
Create an environment.
Damn it! If only.
If only. If only. Maybe I might know a guy. I'm gonna have to see what I'll roll my D12 and see if I know a guy.
I will also just throw once again, Eberron is by far my favorite setting, and it's not even close. And I've never gotten to play in a really good long-term campaign. I will say Ralph ran one for a while, had a ton of fun, but it kind of died. So I'm not saying that was fun, but it died on me. So if you ever want to run an Eberron campaign, or maybe it's like a Patreon thing I could sneak into, I'm there.
Working on it.
Okay.
I got a little bit more playtesting, and I'll be calling you for that. And I will say that our good friend Mike from 19 Hits the Dragon, he is a huge Eberron fan, and like he has given me so many ideas. I have not been able to get it scheduled, but like I too absolutely love Eberron and want to play in it and haven't been able to. So largely the what I've been working on is the kind of Eberron game I've always wanted to play. Sergio did a slew of great episodes on his show, the D&D Lorecast about Eberron, and all jazzed me like fueled every fire I've ever had for gaming. Kind of good. So I'm right with you. Eberron is just that spot that just it is that itch that will always be itching. I need to keep scratching it. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
So when we get closer to done, you will get that call.
So
you
one
will
of the
absolutely get
one of
that
the
call.
worst games I've ever played in, one of the worst campaigns I ever played in was Eberron. But the RPG Academy would not have existed without that terrible campaign and the Catacomb by extension. So I'm grateful for that. But that was me like calling out to the ether, like, I really want to play Eberron. And I had someone go, oh, I love Eberron. I'll run a campaign for you. And it was one of the worst things I've ever experienced in my life. But it brought Jared and Brad and I together, which is sort of the nuclei of the RPG Academy and then thus a Catacomb. So anyways, we probably got time for about one more.
All right. So I want to piggyback or keep
sure,
going
yeah.
with kind of the grim setting. Here's one that I found, and I don't know how often it is, but again, several websites I found talked about this. And that's the GMs that run a game where everything, everyday life can be deadly. So the GMs have you roll a lot of dice. Like some of the examples they used were, hey, you walk into town, see a random pet. You walk over to pet him, roll an animal handling. Oh, you failed, you get bit. Take some damage. Or your weapon's been damaged, you got to sharpen it. Roll to not cut yourself. My favorite one, hook up with the tavern. Roll to make sure you don't end up with an STD, which I was like, well, I've never played that one, but I've also never been the guy, even when I was a teenager, didn't play the whole, I want to go to the bar and get laid game. Like I just never did. So I've never run a game that's quite that deadly. And when I've run Shadow of the Demon Lord, I've run Ravenloft, I think going that extreme is just a little too far. Like if I walk into town and there's a dog that walks up wagging his tail, he's already friendly. At the most I might say is, all right, Michael, roll a quick insight check. Yeah, that dog has got his hair standing up. Looks like whatever he's standing next to, he doesn't want you near it.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you're like, I'm going to go up and pet him.
Yeah.
All right. You're getting bit now.
Yeah. No, I would hate this. This would be like a huge red flag for me. Again, I don't like rolling for common things. Like you're just doing the normal things that you would do in a D&D game. I assume you have enough skill. If you have any like proficiency added at all, if it's a skill on your skill list, you don't need to roll unless there's something attached, time, that kind of thing. Like you're being chased and you have to do this, then sure. But otherwise, absolutely not. The only exception I'll throw in is I have played in a couple of the games where it's you're playing D&D with your buddies and all of a sudden now you, Michael, are in a D&D game and you have to try to survive. Then yeah, if I'm trying to sharpen a sword, maybe I roll because Michael doesn't know how to sharpen a sword. That's probably the only example that I would be okay with it. And even that would be until we are granted our first level because we have survived 6 months in this fantasy world. But yeah, other than that, not a fan of those at all.
Oh, if we ever end up in a D&D world, yep, sure, Dragon. I'm on your team. Yeah. You want me to stab the guy next to me? Sorry, Lee Winnicott. This is gonna hurt.
Yeah,
I'll make it just the leg, buddy. Just the leg.
I am probably the first one dead because I am as stubborn as you will ever meet a person. Josh, when he watches this episode, will like roll out of his chair and do a spit take for the ages when he hears that. But yeah, I am almost guaranteed to be the first one out. Foolhardy to a point. Yeah, I don't like rolling for silliness. One of the greatest things I ever came across with role playing is the Modifius 2D20 system,
Mhm.
and specifically as it relates to Star Trek, because they start. It's right in the liner notes. Back with 1E, it's still the same with 2E, and it starts by saying, "You're a Starfleet officer. In general, you are competent at almost anything you're going to come to." The given of the game is, given unlimited time, unlimited resources, there is no challenge you cannot overcome, period. That's just a given. So unless there's a time crunch or an opposition to what you're doing, or you have a trait that makes a thing hard for you, you never roll. Nobody rolls to see if they
Mhm.
turn on the computer. Nobody rolls to see if they dial on the phone. Nobody rolls to see if they can open a door. You roll, you don't even roll to pry open a door unless you have to do it in a certain amount of time and or you're being shot at.
Mhm.
That's the given of the game.
Yeah.
And while I think to a large extent I have largely run D&D with a similar modus operandi, the reality is there have been a lot of times where I haven't, where I've made some rolls that I think are largely unnecessary. And my games are better because I now have read those words and I
Yep.
apply it to every game I run. I am only rolling, pardon me, I'm only rolling time situations, opposition situations, or some kind of narrative difficulty with the thing. That's it.
I think
Other than that, there's no point in rolling for it.
I think this is a newer GM habit, something that you do when you first start, because you don't know how to find the fun or interject fun. And so you're hoping that the randomness of the die will do that for you. Like, oh, you're just trying to ride your horse. Haha, you fell off. That, we all at the table get to laugh at the silliness of your character because you're just not yet equipped or experienced enough to find like where should the fun be in this scene. If it's not the dice, if it's not the uncertainty of success, where would it be? And I think given more time and experience, most of us probably have got to the point where that's not where the fun is. So we will go on to the thing where we will skip over the boring parts and get to the fun stuff, even if it's like jumping a week ahead. Like, oh, you're traveling to the woods. Okay, you're now at the Cave of Wonders because that's where the fun is. Or you might have a random encounter, or you might have an encounter set up. But I see that as something that people who are new to DMing are more apt to do, is have people roll for inconsequential things because they don't know how to pace the game yet, or they don't know how to interject fun, and they're hoping that the randomness of the dice will do that. And for me, I think that's something I've grown beyond. Chris?
Yep.
I agree. I agree that I wouldn't have as much fun in a game like this. I think it would force me to play a lot more word games. I think I would go, oh, my sword got dulled. Okay, well, I'm going to go to the blacksmith shop. I'm going to sit down and watch him sharpen a sword, and I'm going to mimic what he's doing versus just roll. Like, I'm going to try to find ways now to give myself bonuses, or I'm just going to walk around and throw a gold coin to every random kid I see. Hey, sharpen this sword. I cut myself. Oh, it wasn't me. Next kid.
Yeah.
Maybe a bad example, but
Yeah.
I mean, depending upon the character, maybe. But
Yeah.
I think I would get annoyed with it quickly. I don't use it. Again, I run a lot of pretty brutal settings. I said they're brutal, but kind of horror themed settings. But, like you said, if you're opening the door, I don't care. You can open it. If you're running, wearing high heels while the bad guy's chasing you and your blonde hair gets in your face, okay, now you have to roll to open the door. Just because
Yeah.
that sets the scene.
Yeah,
And if
fumbling for
any,
your keys while the killer's chasing you.
Right.
Yeah, that's a real
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Heck, I fumble for the keys when I'm trying to get into the apartment and I just have to go to the bathroom real bad because I've been on the road for 2 hours. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you're rolling some dice. I almost always win that one.
Yeah.
But
Almost.
but almost always. But Michael said it perfectly. You got to get to where the fun is. The fun is not in opening the door. The fun is what's on the
The
door
other
or the
side.
fight that's on the other side.
Yeah.
So either I'm saying you can't open the door, because the bad guy's already there. Or you get in and now I'm rolling because the bad guy's kicking in the door and you barely got in and couldn't quite get it latched in time. Those two things are fun. Making you roll to see if you get no.
Yeah.
No. I'll let you in and it kicks in the door. Or I'm keeping you out and he catches you on the outside. It really depends on did I prep a map for the hallway or did I prep a map for what's on the other side of the door? And that's the spot you're going to get to.
I don't prep maps, but the feeling still applies is that we're going to get to the fun stuff. And then that's where the rolling's going to come in. But I don't fault people who are new. I think it's a natural tendency, but I think over time you're going to learn where to do it, or you're going to have players who are dissatisfied with, but I'm an accomplished horseman. Why did I fall off my horse here? Or why am I rolling to cross the room? Why am I rolling to order soup? Like, I think eventually you're going to have players who express dissatisfaction and you'll have to learn to go, well, okay, maybe we shouldn't roll that. Or there's a reason. Why did I have to roll to order soup? Aha. Why did you have to roll to order soup? And then, maybe you'll figure that out. Yeah, sort of a thing.
Because I didn't have a spoon. One of the greatest lines in that movie. I think it is also important to note that, yes, we never should fault newer GMs as they get their sea legs about them. They're learning how to do this game. We had years to get to where we are and are sitting on the other side of these mics talking about it and pontificating. I made all of those errors, every last one of them, and some of them many, many times. So don't ever feel bad because you just did this last week and then heard this conversation tonight. Yeah. Don't feel bad. I made those types of errors and made those kinds of rolls for probably 5, maybe even close to 6 years, 10 years, before I realized, man, this isn't quite as much fun as I thought it was. And to be fair, my players, my players played in those games without leaving my table for most of those 5 to 10 years. So shame on them also, I guess, for letting me think they were having a good time when nobody had fun with that kind of foolishness. So there's that. I will say though, for GMs that have been at it for a very long time and have had people leave games and have wondered why. It's very hard in a face-to-face scenario to get an after-action review. Like, hey, why do you distance yourself from the game? But you still play, right? It's different. I just don't play D&D anymore. Or, I had kids and I just don't have time in the schedule. Even though sometimes that might be because maybe they weren't having enough fun and they had a good excuse to be out.
Right.
So it's very hard to hear that. But if you are a GM who's been playing for a while, and that happens to be your style, this is not me judging you, but you are witnessing folks leaving your table. Maybe this is good advice to try something new to see if you get better reactions. And if you're looking to try new storytelling techniques, conventions are great places to do that. Because they're not your good friends. They're not your regular game group necessarily. You go to a convention, run for a brand new group of strangers, and then ask the questions. Be ready to get some harsh and real feedback. I've had people that have come to be good friends through the podcast that I've met at different conventions. And I was doing play tests and got some really good feedback based on things that I needed to improve with the adventure in part, and even my storytelling for that adventure as a part. And this is somebody who listens to the show, has gone out of their way to be at places where we've been, and they can still give me great feedback, and I thank them very much for that. Jack, that's you. I really appreciate everything you told me about the playtest we did at TotalCon. Best feedback I got that weekend, by the way. Thank you very much, and it has helped me improve what I was doing with that vastly. So, be open to getting feedback about things after the fact so you can improve what you do. I'm here today because I was not closed-minded to the fact that maybe I could do it better.
Right. I think that's the best skill that you can try to hone and develop as a GM is the desire to want to get better and the understanding that you can get better. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty good DM these days, but every time I run a game, I go, what could I have done better here? You know, sometimes I'll lean on old habits that I know kind of work, especially running for like brand new players. I ran a game a couple weeks ago for some kids who never played before, and it was very railroady, and it's not the type of game I would run for you two, but it was exactly the right type of game to run for those fifth graders who never played before. They all loved it. They now want to play, and I'm trying to get them to be GM. So I did exactly what I needed to do. But when I go to conventions, I'm open to what could I have done better? What could I do differently? And not that I do anything wrong necessarily, but what could I do better? And just being open to the fact that this is a weird semi-social skill where, you know, there's all these different factors and strangers and friends and hot dice, cold dice, expectations of what they were going to do. The game they just got out of could affect your game. And there's a lot that you have to try to manage, plus your own personal life. Maybe you just had a fight with your spouse, or maybe your kid, you know, there's all these different things that can play into that particular game at that particular time. So no matter how good or bad you are, every game is unique. And just being open to the fact that you could be better and want to get better. I think that is the absolute defining key skill to develop and want to get better, is the desire to want to get better. I said that weird, but I think you know what I meant. All right, Chris, we're running long, so wrap us up, sir.
I love these ideas and stuff. Believe it or not, we have not even gotten to the one that I hate the most.
Ooh.
We'll save that for
part 3.
let me rephrase that. I don't like the word hate. I hate the word hate. But anyways, the one that I disagree with the most, I'll say. Okay. So we can do that in a future one. But I love talking about different house rules and how things work and getting different ideas to make the games better. So, but we are running a little late. I know the new Daredevil came out. I know I'm itching to watch that, which if you're not watching Daredevil, you need to. God,
yeah, there's an issue there if you're not. It is so good. I'm actually 2 episodes behind, but
it is hitting every button for me as far as what I think the character should be doing in the storyline. But whole different topic.
Yep. So for this, if you're watching now, thank you for being here. If you're watching in the future, thank you for being here then. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, even if you disagree with us, or maybe especially if you disagree with us. Please comment below what you would do differently, how you do things at your table, why you choose to do them, if you're doing something that we've somewhat said we don't think we would do. And if you have a house rule you would like for us to discuss, because we're going to at least do a part 3 on this, drop those in the comments as well. We would love to have that feedback. We do this show generally every other week, but as Chris and I talked at the top, in 2 weeks from tonight, we are going to be on a boat playing D&D with some strangers and friends, and it's going to be an amazing time. So we will not have a show in 2 weeks, but we do expect to be back 2 weeks after that. So if you would like, again, you've got a month basically to drop some comments and questions below for us to answer. Lewanika, where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to keep up with you or interact with you in other places?
Yeah, so the number one place is actually right here on this channel, Tabletop Journeys. We drop episodes on Fridays for our regular podcast episodes, which we show on YouTube. We are also found on Spotify. On Tuesdays, we do our actual play of the Star Trek Adventures RPG 2E. And that is the show that I love and enjoy. I spoke about it quite a bit here, and it does inform a lot of my current storytelling and the way I do that. That is Star Trek Preservations. We are in our 3rd season. We are right in the middle of airing episode 2 at the point of time this is being live broadcast. So those are a couple great places to see us. You can see us on Facebook at Tabletop Journeys. You can see us on Discord. When this uploads to YouTube as a video, I will be including the Discord link, so you can join us on Discord. We'd love to have folks. We've got several different channels there, open channels. You want to hear about Star Trek? We've got an open channel just about Star Trek. We've got general conversation topics. We'll let you know when we're dropping various shows and everything. So those are probably the best places to catch us. And stay tuned, because we are just about wrapping up our most recent Kickstarter. And when that gets ready for pre-order, once we're done with all the final writing and layout, and that'll be available. So if you have not already backed or you've not already picked, gotten involved with that, we'll have links for that, and we'll notify everybody once that starts happening.
And what's the email if they want to email the show? Because Chris and I still rely on you. So if they want to email us too, where would they email?
Oh yeah, if you want to email us, that is ttjourneys. See right there, ttjourneys @gmail.com.
Fantastic, Chris.
Discord, several different channels. Also this weekend, I'm at a small convention in Kalamazoo, Michigan called Marmalade Dog. Hold a special place in my heart because, a few years ago, 93, 94, which was in the 1900s for those who are still doing the math.
Yeah. If you remember that, your knees hurt.
Yeah. It was the first convention I ever went to, the first place I bought my own first set of dice and got introduced to something beyond D&D. So I try to go back to it as often as I can. It's a small one run on a college at Western Michigan campus, so it's never going to really blow up. But I really do enjoy going down there and seeing some old faces that have been there just as long as I have. We stroll in with smelling like Bengay and drinking coffee. So
Nice.
Where can we find you?
Excellent.
Yeah, basically Discord, the RPG Academy Discord is still probably the best place other than the email that Leonika already shared. I'll throw a quick plug for the RPG Academy YouTube. I'm still affiliated because I created it, but Jake has taken over the channel and he's doing some amazingly cool videos and fun stuff. So do go check out the RPG Academy YouTube channel. We just hit our 1,000 subscribers, so that's very exciting for us there. And then I will throw out a quick chat. I also do a Smallville podcast. So if you like the TV show Smallville, we are just about to wrap up season 8. Leonika is one of my co-hosts who has joined me multiple times. But we have a rotating cast of co-hosts. I'm always on it, but sometimes we have different co-hosts and we break down every episode. Someone recently I saw was talking on Reddit about breaking down shows, and they said there's 2 different types of ways to do it. And one is Watsonian, and I don't remember the other one, but the Watsonian is the one that we do, where we assume that these are real people in a real world, and we're asking, why did Clark do that? Why is Chloe doing that? The answer is because the writers wrote that in the script, but we try to approach it as these are real people doing real things. So if you enjoyed that type of discussion about Smallville, then maybe check out Farm to Fable. And then the last thing, I also do a podcast about mental health through my service in AmeriCorps called Healthy Minds Alliance, where every episode I interview someone, usually other people who are serving through AmeriCorps. But the most recent episode is about the Green Dot program, which is a nationwide campaign to try to encourage bystander interaction when they notice something that could lead to harm, abuse, that type of thing. So it's just basically educating bystanders on how to safely intervene if you see something. So it's a great program. I was very excited to get to talk to two ladies who are help running it in the Corbin area, which is where I'm at, but it is a national program. So Healthy Minds Alliance is also a podcast you can find me on pretty much every week when we have co-hosts. But we went way past. Thank you for everyone being here. And just remember, if you're having fun,
you're doing it right.
Thanks. We'll